What a headshot! What a head!
How's it guys, this is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you guys through the ultimate guide to the upcoming Game Week 31. Now the ultimate guide might as well be called the ultimate guide to Marcus Rashford because that's basically what this ultimate guide is going to be about. I'll be going over should you guys replace him, if you're going to replace him, which options are the best, and I'll be giving you guys some various options around various price brackets. But don't worry, the usual ultimate guide stuff will still be covered. The stats review is going to kind of open up this video, and we'll always conclude it by the Captaincy debate, as is Erling Haaland the best option for Game Week 31. Now I'll also be giving you guys an update on Luke Shaw's injury situation, and whether to take him out as well. Now there's so many other talking points coming up, and hopefully I'll answer them in my team selection coming up tomorrow, but if I don't, comment them down below, and I'll try and answer as many as possible, or on my Discord server, where I am slightly more active. Otherwise, if they can wait till the deadline stream, you guys can hold on to those questions, and hopefully I do get to them on Saturday. But without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into this ultimate guide. So if you guys are new to this kind of ultimate guide, or just simply new to my channel, we're going to start off this ultimate guide as we always do with the stats review. Now I'll be going over the attacking and the defensive stats, and these will be in two departments. The first department over the entire season to give us a really holistic overview of how the team has performed this season. But then on the right hand side, I'll be going over the last 6 game weeks at a minimum. I say minimum because unfortunately, due to the blanks, due to the doubles, teams have played a varying amount of fixtures, and therefore if you guys do filter to a specific game week, some teams have played a maximum of 9 fixtures. So between 6 and 9 is going to be where you guys do find the sweet spot, but obviously the more games and the more sample you have, the better. But to show you guys an example of what I'm talking about, let's go over the attacking stats. If you guys have followed my channel, you guys know that I use XG non-penalty. I just feel like penalties are quite hard to kind of predict, and that's why taking the non-penalty variant is slightly better in my opinion. So on the left hand side, let's go over the best teams, so the top 6 teams from an XG non-penalty point of view over the entire season, and no surprise there, Man City are at the top. So 1.93 XG per game, these are new per game averages. That's how we kind of negate the fact that some teams have played 6 games, some teams have played 9 games. So the per game averages are what you guys see in terms of the stat. Following them, a Liverpool, Arsenal, Brighton, Newcastle and United. No surprises there. It's an indication usually of how well a team is doing this Premier League season by their XG. If you guys are going cold on the Liverpool, just remember that they are putting up good stats. So I'm targeting a Mo Salah come Game Week 34. Now if you guys are considering kind of going for a Marcus Rashford replacement, the XG non-penalty of that team is also integral, but you guys have a lot of choice on the left hand side. Going to the right hand side, so the last 6 games at a minimum, we've got Man City at the top yet again with 2.18. So a little bit of an increase from their overall stats to the last 6 game weeks, which shows an upturn in Man City's attacking prowess. Following them is going to be Brighton, so a massive uptake of Brighton assets, 2.05. So going from 1.74 as their average to 2.05 also shows that attack is on the ready. We then have Arsenal, United, Liverpool and Newcastle all putting up good respective stats. So once again reminding you guys that you should probably pick a team from these 5 teams, as with only 8 game weeks left of the season, we want to pick those upside teams. But as I always say, with the good we've got the bad, so let's now go over the worst attacks. And what this is going to kind of show you guys is if your defenders are facing these teams, the chance of a clean sheet should be pretty strong. So on the left hand side over the entire season, we've got Southampton at the top, just showcases that their bad season has been because of their attack, with 0.84 per game. Within Nottingham Forest, Wolves, Crystal Palace, Fulham and Bournemouth, so all 3 newly promoted sides are in the worst attacks, which is pretty expected. But if you guys are looking at a Crystal Palace option, just remember that they've just signed a new manager though, and under Roy Hodgson they've actually put up some good stats. That's going to showcase on the right hand side because Crystal Palace aren't in the last 6 games in terms of the worst attacks in the Prem. Southampton though, Nottingham Forest, Fulham, Wolves are continuous, and then we have the introduction of Leicester and Leeds. So we mentioned this with Leicester a lot, that if you guys do own a James Maddison, it might be a transfer out, especially because they face Man City next game week. But otherwise, us Brentford owners, they have Wolves away. Great game on paper from an attacking point of view, so let's hope they keep a clean sheet. But remind you that these teams are simply to target from a defensive point of view, as these are the worst attacks. But now shifting our attention to the defensive side of things, and the stat I chose to use is XG, so including penalties, because I just feel like if a team concedes a few penalties, you have to include that. So on the left hand side, Man City yet again showing that they're the best team in the Prem at the moment. Will they win the title? Will Arsenal? I think it's going to be quite a tight title race. But their XG considered over the entire season is less than 1, so 0.83. Newcastle coming next, Arsenal, Chelsea, Brighton, and finally West Ham. So this is giving me second thoughts about playing a double Newcastle defense. On the right hand side, let's go over the last 6 game weeks at a minimum. Man City yet again at the top, massive increase in their defensive performance, only conceding 0.53 XG per game. We then have Chelsea, Brighton, Crystal Palace, Spurs, and then finally Newcastle. And this added here that Chelsea and Brighton face each other this game week. So an unstoppable force versus an unmovable object, who's going to win at the end of the day? Let's hope whatever players we have on our FPL teams. Finally, Crystal Palace showing that the defense has been pretty strong, Spurs and Newcastle as well. Now I just want to add here that if you guys are looking to bring in a defender this week, Man City are definitely the team that I would target. Unfortunately with all Man City, it's hard to predict who's going to start, but if you can nail the defender with the most minutes, surely that'll be equal FPL points. But finally, going over the worst defenses in the Prem from an XG considered point of view, definitely teams to target from an attacking point of view. If you have options facing these, they could even be Captaincy options, because a haul might be quite likely. On the left hand side, we've got Fulham at the top with the worst defense over the entire season, with 1.78 XG conceded per game. We then have Everton, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, Leeds, and then finally Liverpool, as Liverpool's opening run was pretty bad. Then on the right hand side, most of the teams are pretty similar. We've got Fulham, Nottingham Forest, and Everton as our worst three. Followed by Bournemouth, Leeds, and then finally Manchester United, so quite interesting there that United have creeped into the worst defenses. Now this week, United faced Nottingham Forest, that's a great fixture on paper, and then we got Fulham and Everton actually playing each other in Game Week 31, so that proves that goals might be in that game. Then Harry Kane against Bournemouth, definitely a fixture to target, might even be a Captaincy option, as Leicester aren't on this list. But that's going to kind of wrap up our stats review. A reminder here that all the stats you guys see on screen are from Fantasy Football Fix. You guys can go over to the Opta Stats sandbox and choose whatever stat and whatever teams you want. But now going to the big talking points about Game Week 31, and it's all about Marcus Rashford and Luke Shaw. So we've actually had an injury update today before I actually recorded this video, so I wanted to wait for this injury update before I made this video, just to give you guys the most up-to-date news as possible. So let's start off with the left-hand side, Marcus Rashford. So today we had Ten Hag come out and say that he should be missing for a few games. Now I didn't elaborate on what a few games means. This could mean 2 games, it could mean 7. I guess that's up to us for interpretation. He did also state that he expects him to be back fairly soon because he has started his rehabilitation, but I'll take that with a pinch of salt because of the previous mentioned a few games missing. Then in terms of Luke Shaw, he did state that he's going to be missing the game tomorrow night in the Europa League, but he expects him to be back on a shorter basis. Now obviously with these 2 points, they're quite ambiguous. There was no kind of game stated. He didn't tell us that Marcus Rashford will be back for Game Week 34's double. He didn't say Luke Shaw's going to be back in 1 week or 2 weeks, and that's quite frustrating. But in terms of my own opinion, I think that Luke Shaw is probably a hold for the time being. I think that he should at least be fine for double Game Week 34. So you guys can simply bench him for about 1 or 2 game weeks. If you guys are on a free hit for Game Week 32, this makes it even easier. You just have to avoid Game Week 31, Game Week 32. You get a fresh new team anyways. Then come Game Week 33, we can make decisions based on the latest news. But with Marcus Rashford, unfortunately, it does make it a little bit spicy because with only 8 game weeks left of this season, as mentioned before, you guys have to take some risks and the points are there to be had. And in terms of the midfielder options, we have so many options to look at. Teams with double game weeks, teams with great fixtures. So if you guys don't have a set replacement, it might actually be better to just transfer them out. Now in terms of their fixtures, it's super annoying that they're missing Game Week 30 and Game Week 31 as they have Nottingham Forest away this game week, which could have been a massive haul. Then after that, Game Week 33, they have Spurs away, then the double of Aston Villa at home and Brighton away. Now I really do hope that both these 2 assets are back for double Game Week 34, but like most people are saying with Rashford, if he is back for Game Week 34, he might not play both games as they're not going to rush him back from an injury. So up to debate here, what I'm thinking about for my own personal team, so ignoring your guys' teams, whatever benches you have, whatever replacements you have, I think that Luke Shaw's a hold for me because he should be back for Game Week 34. In terms of Marcus Rashford, I can simply bench him this week, play Solly March, then come Game Week 33 make a better informed decision based on the latest injury news. But I do understand if you guys want to take him out, and that's why I've gone for a whole selection of replacements in the next talking point. If you guys are looking to take out Luke Shaw, you don't have a set replacement in terms of your defenders, I would definitely target the Man City defense as mentioned previously in the stats review. Options I would look at are Nathan Ake, I think he's the best cheap option to go for, or if you can afford Ruben Diaz, he's probably my favorite option. Yes, we do have a John Stones, we have some other assets, a Kyle Walker, a Lewis, but I think between Diaz and Ake, you guys get that price point difference, and they seem pretty nailed. Otherwise, an Aston Villa asset, a Liverpool asset if you can go for a Trent could be a look, or a straight swap to Martinez if you want to still go for United. But in terms of Marcus Rashford, let's go over some set replacements, going over the stats and the fixtures. So the first talking point I want to go over in terms of Marcus Rashford replacements, I've kind of put 3 silos here of options that I'd potentially look at depending on your kind of price brackets. The first option is going to be Jack Grealish, and in terms of Jack Grealish, I'm representing any kind of Man City midfielder. You could go for a Kevin De Bruyne, you could go for a Mahrez or Foden, that sort of thing. But I think Jack Grealish at the moment is the best Man City midfielder to get. Fixtures coming up, Leicester at home, obviously you want him to play Game Week 31. Leicester at home is a great game on paper. Blanks in 32, then it's Arsenal in 33 at home, and then Fulham and West Ham in double Game Week 34. So great fixtures on paper, just Game Week 33 is quite tough, but as I always say, Man City are so tough to get in because you don't even know if they're going to play. They won last night 3-0 against Bayern, so there might be some rotation in the second leg, but knowing Pep Guardiola, he'll play his full starting 11 like he did last night next week. So will Jack Grealish play in Game Week 31? That's the big question. Some people are saying go for Mahrez because he was benched last night. But just remember, this is a long-term punt as you want them for Game Week 34. So that's all for me. Jack Grealish is probably the one I would go for even if he is benched on the weekend. He should be fine for the upcoming fixtures in a tight title race with Arsenal. Now my second replacement is going to be if you guys want to save some value or go for a kind of relatively well-priced option, it's the Brighton assets, and I've gone for Solly March. Now the reason I've gone for Solly March is I think he's quite differential. You guys probably own a Matoma, might own a McAllister, but any of those three are set replacements. Now Brighton have a great attack, we saw that in the XG not penalty, and fixtures coming up against Chelsea away, not the best of fixtures. They do blank in Game Week 32, but afterwards have Nottingham Forest away, then a home double of Wolves and United. I just feel like the Brighton assets are a set swap, and that's the reason why potentially I'm going to keep Rashford, because I will have Solly March on my bench if I go for Jack Grealish. So if you guys don't have a double up, I definitely look at the Brighton assets, have a ton of doubles coming up as well, the most of any team. Now my final option, if you guys have some spare millions in the bank, is going to be Mo Salah from Liverpool, as Liverpool also have a few doubles coming up, and more importantly, they have a fixture in Game Week 32. They have Leeds away this week, great fixture on paper from an attacking point of view, Nottingham Forest at home in blank Game Week 32, then West Ham in Game Week 33, then a double of Spurs and Fulham. Now I know that most of you guys can't afford a Salah, so if you want to go for another replacement, you guys could, but I should worry about some potential rotation around someone like a Jota or a Gakpo. So Salah for me right now could be an option to look at, but as I said, he is quite expensive, so probably unreachable. Now these three Salahs are where I would kind of put most of my bets. There are some other teams to look at, we'll talk about them in the next talking point, where we go over specific players and their stats. But I really don't think that you guys can go wrong in any of these three assets. Grealish, Solly March and Salah should all get you points, but remember you guys can go from Mahrez, can go from a Matoma McAllister, maybe even take a punch on a Gakpo or a Jota. Let me know right now your initial replacement for Rashford if you were to take him out. I'd probably say Jack Grealish like most people will, as I think Man City are on red hot form. Now quickly before we go over the stats, I went over to Fix and went over to the expected FPL points from the restart to the current game week. So that's from Game Week 17 to the current game week. That gives us a nice kind of sample size. And on screen you guys can see the expected points per game. So Grealish has the lowest of 5.25 per game, followed by Solly March with 6.69 and finally Mo Salah with 6.94. This just shows you the extreme value that these Brighton mids do offer. So if you guys don't have a Brighton mid, I think they're the most sensible to bring in. You're combining great stats with the fact they'll play mostly 90 minutes, whereas Jack Grealish there might be some benchings. But that's just my 2 cents. I'd probably go for Jack Grealish as I do own 2 Brighton mids, but if you guys don't, I think they might be the best value plays in the game. But now going over the actual stats of the options, what I went over to Fantasy Football Fix, I went into their Opta stats sandbox, selected midfielders, didn't have a price category, and I sorted from the restart. So as mentioned, Game Week 17 to the current game week, and yet again I went by expected FPL points. What this metric is, it's a kind of combination of expected assists, expected goals, and even expected clean sheets, as these are midfielders. So as you guys can see, the top is going to be Mo Salah, definitely kind of proving good value for money if you guys do want to go from, with 6.94. He's then followed by Solly March with 6.79, we then have Mahrez, Martinelli, Matoma, Grealish, and Saka. Now I generally think out of these options, you guys can't go wrong with selecting any of them. Great FPL assets at the current moment with good fixtures. Now the one player I wanted to point out here is going to be Riyad Mahrez, because as I always say, Riyad Mahrez, if he plays, he gets you FPL points. Unfortunately though, you have to kind of predict when he's going to start. I think that's why I kind of side with Jack Grealish rather, because over the long term, I think that Pep trusts Grealish more than Mahrez. Foden's coming back from that operation that he did have, so should be back in the lineup. I think that's going to target Mahrez more than Grealish. But the one other player I want to target is going to be Martinelli. If you guys do want to go for a kind of outside punt, no one's really looking at these Arsenal midfielders, and Martinelli for me is the best asset even over a Saka. Great XG, great XA, great expected FPL points. So if you guys want to go a little bit different, go for a team that's fighting for the title with a lot of rest period, and just remember there aren't in any other competitions, Martinelli might be the one to look at. Then obviously we have Solly March and Matoma. Either of these two assets are going to be good, but from a stats point of view, Solly March is always going to be better because he underperforms his stats, whereas Matoma is an overperformer. Then if you guys can stretch the budget, obviously Salah's a great asset to look at, but I think come Game Week 34, because you're probably going to take out Harry Kane, I'll probably extend that move till then. So my current thinking or ranking or tier list, or whatever you want to say about Rashford replacements, I'd put the Brighton options number 1, the Man City options number 2, and maybe a cheeky punt on a Martinelli at number 3, but Salah could also be there. Let me know your Rashford replacement at the current moment, and why is it probably Grealish? Now the final talking point to go over with my Rashford replacements, I wanted to show you guys the projected points over the next 5 game weeks, excluding free at Game Week 32. Now on Fix, you guys can do that. You can include any game weeks you want to. I excluded Game Week 32 because some of these options do blank, and if you guys are on a free at, you're going to deal with that game week with the chip. But if you guys don't want to use the free hit, you guys can go back to fix, go over the projected points, and just include GameWeek 32. So on screen right now, you guys can see the projected points. You got Salah and De Bruyne at the top with some massive points projections, whereas March and Grealish are quite neck and neck. So that's why these two are my favorite replacements, because even at their price points, they're the best performers, so the value is going to be there. We then have Gakpo, Matoma, and then finally Martinelli, and as mentioned with the previous kind of slide, any of these assets, if you guys want to go for them, I think they're going to equal FPL points. It just might be quite hard to predict who's the best asset. Now I see that Gakpo's here as an alternative to Mo Salah, so if you guys do want to go for the Dutchman, he could be a nice differential. But for me, this just kind of proves this fact that Grealish and March / Matoma, whichever Brighton asset you want to look at, are the best assets as a Rashford replacement. So I'm going to stick by my tier list. Number 1 is going to be the Brighton assets, number 2 is going to be the Man City assets, and number 3 will be Martinelli or maybe a Salah. But you guys can roast me on that tier list down below. What's your tier list for your Rashford replacements? Now the final talking point to go over is going to be all about captaincy, and is it as easy as Erling Haaland? Well, I don't even know. I think it might be. I'm probably going to have the Captaincy armband on him. They play Tuesday, they play on the weekend, then play Wednesday. That's surely enough rest for the Norwegian. But as mentioned early on and continuously throughout this video, there are only 8 game weeks left. If you guys do want to go Maverick, the Captaincy is going to be where it's at, especially in a game week like 31 where everyone's going to go for Erling Haaland. There might be other options with better fixtures, more nailed minutes. Let's go over a few of them. But I'm going to put Erling Haaland slap bang in the middle, number 1 Captaincy selection for the upcoming game week, because I think you guys have to be a little bit mental to go without him, as Leicester at home's a great fixture. But let's just say that you are expecting him to be rested, does have buy-in up next, but because they won 3-0, I think that Pep's going to focus back on the league. So for me, Erling Haaland's the best selection to go for, and probably my captain, but let's go over 2 alternatives. So the first alternative is going to be of the fact that Rashford is now currently injured. It's going to be Bruno Fernandes against Nottingham Forest away. I believe that Bruno will play a more attacking role now that Rashford is currently injured, as they do need to rely on his attacking threat going forward. So Bruno could be a selection, however, I don't think he can compete with an Erling Haaland, and that's just probably my third favorite selection out of these 3. My second best option is going to be Harry Kane against Bournemouth at home. Great fixture on paper. We saw those Bournemouth defensive stats are looking that great, and I think that Spurs will do quite well in this one. So if Spurs do well, Harry Kane is probably going to do well, and that's why he's my second favorite option for this game week. Probably my pick out of the differential captains, although his ownership is quite high. I think that hardly anyone's going to captain him. Now let's take a look at projected points from Fix once again, and you guys can see that Bruno Fernandes is predicted to score 4.3, massive drop off from 6.9 for Haaland and 6.3 for Kane. But usually if the projected points are leading towards the most heavily captained option, that's probably going to spell bad news if you want to go differential. But if you want to be brave, I'd probably go for Harry Kane. There are a few other captains that you could look at. Mo Salah against Leeds away is a great game, or Saka against West Ham away. But I'll probably lean on Haaland, but if you guys have another alternative, comment it down below, and also let me know who you captaining, probably the Norwegian. But that's the rest guys. Hope you did enjoy it. If you guys like, if you didn't subscribe, if you haven't subscribed yet, I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow for the team selection, where we do kind of ponder the thought about transferring Rashford out. But I'm going to sign off. It's Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.